It'll take about 10 seconds, so bear with me. Okay, Mr. Chair, we are now live on YouTube.
Morning, everybody, and welcome to the Boston Town Deal Board meeting. Thank you all for attending this morning. I wonder if I could pass to Louisa to provide me details of those people who've sent their apologies for today's meeting, please.
Yeah, Nick Heath from Wilmot Dixon, Kingsley Taylor, Norman Robinson from the Environment Agency, Nick Warboys from Longhurst, Simon Beardsley from Links Chamber of Commerce, Alison Fairman, John Harness from NHS, Donna Watton, Alice Olson from Metzer-Wood, and Councillor Eddie Pole from Lincolnshire County Council.
Not aware of any other apologies, so we'll carry on to agenda item number 2, which is the minutes of the Boston Town Deal meeting held on the 5th of October. And everybody should have had copies of those minutes. I don't intend to go through those minutes line by line, but has anybody got any comments or observations or questions on those minutes at all? If we haven't, then could I have a proposer and seconder for those minutes? Is anybody willing to propose them? I can't see any hands.
Happy to propose.
So that's Greg is proposing them, and I think Councillor Paul Skinner, you're happy to second those?
Oh, happy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take those as read. In terms of matters arising, item number 3, I think unless anybody has any other matters arising, I think the main items are clearly going to be talking through the town investment plan and then the next steps, which are the next agenda items. So if nobody's got any other matters arising, then we can move on to item 4. Councillor Paul Skinner, your hand is up. Is that because you wish to raise a point, or because you were seconding?
That was because I was seconding. I'm just lowering it. Sorry, Chair.
No, that's fine. No, I'm just trying to illustrate. I'm paying attention.
I would never have it any other way, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. So we're now on to item number 4, the draft town investment plan. Clearly, people will be aware from the minutes. There's been an awful lot of work taking place, over the last 12 months, but particularly in the last few weeks, in order to try to get us to a stage where we can sign off the town deal in readiness for a submission to government by the end of October. So with that as a backdrop, I'm going to hand over to Ivan, who's going to talk us through where we are, with the intention that what we really need to do is agree as a board the final town investment plan, if we can today, for submission, subject to the recommendations in the paper on agenda item 4. So I'll hand over to Ivan.
Thank you very much, Neil. There is a report for agenda item 4, and I would sort of summarise it by saying that all of our ducks are starting to come into a row. What I've set out in this report is just a reminder at the start of it about what the content and format of the Towns Fund bid has to be. And effectively, there are 3 elements to the first bit, which is a context analysis, key opportunities for the town, and engagement and delivery. And then a second bit, which is a prioritised list of projects, with reference to quite a bit of detail about how those projects are going to be delivered. We had a first go at this, and at the last board meeting we talked about that, and we ran that through check and challenge session with a group of experts assembled through the good offices of the cities and growth team who are overseeing this process. And I've set out here the comments that they made. And we did talk a bit about these comments last time, but I put them here to remind people, because what then follows in terms of the attached draft is our response to that. It's mainly written by me with some input from others, but the rather wonderful florid prose with which it now starts has been given a bit of stellar treatment by Claire Foster as well. So it's evolved. But we had the opportunity yesterday morning, Lydia, Michelle and I, to talk to Mick and Pete from the government office and citizen growth team about the plans. We talked about all three of the ones that cover that coastal seaboard, and they gave us some useful hints and tips moving forward for some final refinements. To say this quite carefully, because I don't want to sound complacent at all, but none of them majorly worried the horses in terms of what we've got to do next to probably get it into an absolutely finished state. I did flag up some of the final tasks that we were aware we needed to do before we had that session in the next bit of the plan, in the next bit of the report, where I talked about the fact we need to write a formal engagement plan. We need to explain how we're going to come up with a benefit cost ratio for each of the projects. We need to do a little bit more work to set out our description of demand, footfall and market failure. We also need a summary table that shows in one simple place how it all aggregates up in terms of outputs, outcomes, costs and deliverables. The prioritisation process needs to be tidied up. I think what came out of the discussion we had yesterday was the real benefit of having a very clear for the whole programme theory of change. And Peterborough, who went in July, have done a good job of that. And Mick Lazarus very helpfully shared with us the example of what they'd done. So there's a little bit more work to do today, but I would suggest that finishing all of that off, unless we've got some real keen beans on the board, can be delegated really. None of it, I think, is going to change the core of the bid. And of course, you've got the full text of the latest version that in a moment when I've stopped talking, you can comment on as appropriate. And if I could thank one or two people who've already sent some comments in, they've been very helpful. And we are still in the market if people are either a bit shy, although I don't think anybody on this call is shy, or just feels that it would take too much time to offer their views verbally for you to send stuff to us. Because even though today we're hoping to close the book on the detailed structure of the bid, there is still a chance to refine it. But you know, if somebody, for example, was to come forward and say, well, actually, I think we should have a completely different project after today, that would be a different matter. But if somebody was to come forward with some insightful views about context or approach, then we'd absolutely still have time to take those on board. There will be some appendices, and I've just set those out. And again, I'm not going to go into detail about those, but they're in the report. So that's all the garnish, if you like. If we get to the meat of the thing, the real challenge that we've currently got, and I would say by way of reassurance, this isn't necessarily different to the issues people are wrestling with in Lincoln particularly, but also to a lesser extent in East Lindsey around their two things, is that we've got to manage people's enthusiasm. So when we last met, we were in a major overbid scenario. We'd got two provisional amounts of 15 million, one for the Mayflower Centre and one for Boston College, and one for PE 21. Thanks to some really good pragmatic thinking by the different players in there, we've condensed that right down so that we've now got 15 million as the split between those two projects rather than 30 million as the sum of them. But when we got all the smaller project details and information in detail from people, and I must thank them for doing that, and we totted it up, it still gave us an overbid, which, and you'll see in the table there, took us out to 27.5 million. Now, 27.5 million is neither one thing nor another. It's not sufficiently more than 25 million to justify the extra scrutiny and challenge we would get. It's really sufficiently close to 25 million that I think tactically the advice we've had is that we should try and get it to below the 25 million. So we convened a meeting of the chair and vice chair of the board, supported by myself and some of the officer corps, particularly Lydia and Michelle, and we've come up with a range of suggestions based on a rationale. So the suggestions are shown in the grid, and the rationale is spelt out where we're proposing that the figures be reduced. And then just to remind people of the justification for taking that approach more widely, I've set out again the key criteria that we've considered, and I've set out for each project how they line up against both the town-specific criteria and the Green Book criteria. So the final judgment is the board's. We thought it would be very helpful. We were in two minds whether to just ask you to spend lots and lots of time thinking about this, or whether to give you something as a very firm professional recommendation. And I think Neil said, well, you know, trying to do this from scratch with a group of 30 people this close to the deadline would be, you know, just almost an impossible task. So let's give people a clear professional recommendation based on looking at what we know about these projects, set out the criteria that they speak to, and so that's what we've done. And this is the really key part of where we are now. We need to really get your agreement as set out in the recommendations, which is that we determine how best to accommodate the current lists within that gross figure of 25 million. And that we have a high level discussion, if there's time today, where you can comment on the written content of the strategy part of the tip, but you can feed back to us separately in relation to that. But what we'd then like to do, subject to going through that process effectively, is to be in a position for this then to go through the council's decision-making processes. That's not because the council's in charge rather than the town investment plan, but it's because financially the council's holding the baby. So the section 151 officer at the council has to be prepared to sign this process off ultimately, and therefore we've got to go through their process as well as this. And the final thing I'd say in relation to our professional recommendation to you based on this table is that we've dodged the easy option, which would be to just suggest a 10% cut for everybody, because in our experience that never really gets you anywhere very good at all. So we've taken what we think is a proportionate and appropriate view, but it does have some implications for particularly the three projects at the very bottom of the list. But we've tried to do that in a way that means, in the way that we're going to write up the Towns Fund proposal, that there is still scope through the negotiation process to bring those projects on if there is a view that some of the other projects that we've put forward that are above them on this prioritisation list, when we get into that year-long negotiation, for reasons that none of us could understand at the current time, and circumstances may change, of course, during that period, aren't quite as robust. That these projects, even though they're not proposed directly to be delivered, these bottom three on this list, are still referenced in the bid, and because of the way, and Mick may come on and talk about this later, the funding envelope is allocated. There is still a bit of flexibility around that, but we have to be clear and say at the moment that our proposal would be that those three projects at the bottom are put on hold and not included as direct funding proposals at this stage, and one or two of the other projects have a slight, for want of a better term, haircut to take account of the fact we've got to manage to get within the 25 million. So I'm sorry I've rabbited on for the thick end of 15 minutes, but hopefully that gives people a good context to start the debate, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Yeah, I think there's obviously everybody's had the minutes. There's probably two specific elements to this that we need to sort of discuss. Initially, we obviously need to look at the table of projects. That's the sort of the crux of today's meeting, making sure that we get a firm list of proposals that the board is happy to support. The second bit is the detail of the wording of the town investment plan, and I think that is something that, as Ivan said, can maybe carry on even beyond this meeting. But I think today it's crucial that first element, that the list of projects getting to within the envelope of 25 million, we get a firm basis for that today. I'm going to open it to the floor in a second in terms of any questions or comments, but if I may, I've had some discussions with Simon Beardsley from the Chamber of Commerce, who's been unable to make it today, but I've said that I'll raise some of the issues that he raised to me today, just so that they're sort of aired at the board. I think there's one thing maybe, Ivan, if you can elaborate on in terms of maybe the scoring criteria, because obviously we set up a technical subgroup and we went through a lot of these projects in detail through the various meetings that we have within those technical subgroups, and at times different projects have been in and then others have been added, and the scoring basis has altered. I wonder if you can just elaborate on sort of the rationale or the reasons for that, so that we can understand, so that we know where we've got to now. I appreciate where we've got to now is the conclusion of it, but some of that has evolved over time. So maybe if you can just elaborate on that for us.
Yes, we've tried to do this in real time to not disadvantage any of the projects. Some of the projects have taken a little while to be able to communicate fully with us the enough information for us to make a full judgment. So we did an initial cut through the technical subgroup of the projects where we had the information to hand, but we've subsequently fed in the additional projects that make up the full list now, as they've come forward with the information that we've needed to get to this deadline. And I, with some delegated discussion with Michelle and Lydia, have inserted those projects based on the information they've given to us within the scoring matrix to give us this overall position. It doesn't radically change the ranking of the majority of projects, but we now have more information on particularly some of the bottom projects, actually, although they've not been put bottom because of that, which has enabled us to give a rounded view. I would say, if it's any comfort, that the poor old Lincoln group next week, and this has not been driven by me, it's been driven by a different secretariat, but I've had an input. I've got 4 different grids from different stages of the process, which then have been averaged. And so I think they're going to get a real headache in terms of trying to get to the number of it. But the reason we've done that, to be fair, is that I think if we had a hard deadline early on, we would have not given everybody the best chance to put their projects forward. And of course, it's in your gift now to make the decision on what we've presented. This isn't a fait accompli. So the reason it has evolved is purely because we've tried to be as contemporary as possible and as up to date as possible, so that we could give you this rationale for you to challenge us on or to accept as you see appropriate.
Thank you for that, Ivan. Yeah, I think clearly we have to recognise the challenging times that we're operating in. I know a lot of businesses and organisations are obviously got an awful lot to cope with in terms of COVID on top of everything else. So that there has to be a recognition of that, doesn't there? And I understand the evolving nature of how these projects have come about. With regard to the sort of final decision, the technical subgroup was obviously set up to try to look in detail at these projects, but everybody was always clear that the final decision would always need to come back to the board, and hence today's meeting, and also the reason I was keen to try to get a firm recommendation with that actually met the criteria of the £25 million that we need to hit with a list of projects. It doesn't mean that we have to go with that, but I just felt, as you said earlier, that was a better basis rather than sort of scratching our heads and trying to come up with a solution. But I'm open to suggestions as to alternatives, and I'm open to anybody from the floor commenting on what's been said, in particular with regard to the list of projects and the process we've been through. Has anybody got any questions or comments that they want to raise? Val, I think.
Sorry,
yeah, Val.
The little hand button and I can't find it. It's just, I think you've picked up on Simon's comment about the title of our project, the Boston Port Project, in that it's more appropriate in its original format, which was the Centre for Food and Fresh Produce Logistics, which kind of represents the project probably better than the port. It's fueling the port, it's intrinsically linked to the port, but it's not just focused on the port itself. And we just felt, or I feel personally, that the port is a huge beast of a project. This is a catalyst, but the title of the Centre for Food and Fresh Produce Logistics is what we would be recommending. I don't know if others have got any comment about that, how they feel. I see Andy's on the call, and Michelle.
I think it's just shorthand on my part there. I must apologise for that, but we're very happy to use that title. Sorry, Andy.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to second what Val has said, actually, because I'm in total agreement with that.
Anybody else got any comments on that? I think it's something that's been sort of debated. It's maybe the speed in which we're doing this to try to sort of get information out. I think it's always recognised that it's the centre of food and logistics. The link to the port is obviously really important for us to make that link, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the title of the project. So I think the point has been made, and I don't think anybody's got any fundamental issues with that. Michelle, maybe you want to come.
Yes, thank you, Neil. I was just going to it's on my screen there. Sorry, I was just going that that's exactly referencing your point, that the port is one of our major assets within the town deal, because of again what that's able to springboard in, but certainly the links for the port to the Food Valley, which has just received some refreshed publicity leaks, and also the allocation or designation, I should probably say, of Greater Lincolnshire being a high performing opportunity in respect of a most recent Department of International Trade initiative, which again was announced last Friday, and certainly something around our tip and around the links to these projects that are being discussed at the moment with regards to the Centre for Fresh Produce and Logistics and the skills agenda, is to make sure those links are brought out in a sharper focus in terms of the links to the project and those other activities that are happening around Boston, but of which we play a really key part. And again, I just take us back to our evidence base, which is within the tip, around the number of the percentage of our population who are employed within that sector, and then also the impact of the robotics and automation and AI developments that will have on existing job opportunities and existing careers. So strong link there, and that's something that again will just be harnessing and effectively focusing so it's in sharper clarity. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Michelle. We can make that adjustment in the final tip, can't we? So that point is, or those points are sort of brought out. Has anybody else got any questions, queries in relation to anything that's been said? I'll perhaps raise a couple of points that again I talked over with Simon Beardsley, in particular relation to the Mayflower Centre and the PE21 projects. I think he was just sort of seeking clarification really in terms of the Mayflower Centre, Mayflower project. He was asking whether a full highways and traffic assessment's been done. I think looking at the traffic generation, and maybe I'll just ask Ivan or Michelle to address those. And also with regard to the PE21, I know there was some discussions about the leisure centre and whether or not that's whether alternative leisure centres, I guess, in the town could be looked at as an alternative to a further leisure centre within the PE21 proposal. I appreciate that Jeff Moulder Centre and the Boston Mayflower project is all interlinked with PE21, and decisions will need to be made by the council in relation to all of those. But maybe we can just address the points that Simon's raised with regard to the Mayflower Centre and PE21, if we could.
Just from me, and then I perhaps might hand over to Claire, who's on the call, I think. We're not at the level of a full traffic assessment at this stage. That'll be worked through as part of the development of stage 2. And I'm absolutely confident that it's not necessary for us to have that level of detail at this stage. Although Claire has undertaken a lot of detailed feasibility work, and she's got architects and other people beavering away at the current time in some detail. I don't think personally, it's only my view and I don't live in Boston, but introducing alternative sites for the leisure centre at this stage is a practical suggestion because of where we are in terms of the time and approach in relation to all the work that's gone on, and the need to get something in within a fortnight that is credible and costed and properly worked through. But perhaps if I could hand over to Claire, and then I see that Councillor Skinner would like to comment.
Are you available?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Oh, hi. I'm just leaving a table full of sausages. Bear with. Okay. Yeah, so I've actually shared some of the visuals if people wanted to see them. I've shared them with Louisa. Can you hear me?
You're a bit faint, Claire. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I'm trying to get somewhere where there's not something making a noise. Yes, I can hear you. I was just saying that I've shared.
I think she's trying to.
Yeah, I think we've lost her, haven't we? I think what she's trying to say, we've got some visuals that Louisa has got. I mean, that may be beneficial, I guess. Louisa?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get them up on screen now, Neil.
I know that there's an awful lot of work being done in a short space of time on the Mayflower project, and I think it would be beneficial for the board to sort of see where the project is. It's clearly in terms of the funding taking the biggest proportion of the funding that we're bidding for, but it is a flagship scheme, and it is at the heart of the skills and aspiration theme that is one of the key threads of our bid. Boston College is obviously one of the top colleges in the country, and I think this will help make them a far more inclusive college, help transform one of the main entrances into the college, and hoping the aim is to attract far more people into the college, so that we can start to address some of the skills agenda that and issues that are around in Boston at the moment. Louisa, are we struggling with the technology in terms of getting that shared?
I'm just trying to get the link working, but it's not loading.
Okay. It's probably a big file. But maybe I'll pass over to Michelle, and if you want to.
Thanks, Neil. Louisa, I wonder if we can get IT on it, if we can get Jason back into the meeting to talk with that. And in the meantime, perhaps while we wait for that, Neil, we might need to move forward. But if I can just also give some explanation. What's the vision? And again, we really want to share with you the visuals, because they are really outstanding in terms of the offer to the Boston community. And it's very much about that aspiration and about what we've just had a meeting before about another project where we talked about a lack of ambition, and that where sometimes ideas and initiatives are proposed, sometimes it's very quick for people for various reasons, say that will never work. And actually there's something that fits into the wider aspiration of our broader community. And what the initiative that Claire has come up with is not just about the college, and I think that's the really key thing. This is a college. It's about opening it to the community in a much broader context. The other factor is that it's the locality to the town centre, from the marketplace to the new entrance of the proposed Mayflower Centre. It's 0.6 of a mile. Now, what that enables us to do is
I can connect on my own phone.
Is something to do something called a skills and health escalator, and that then links the railway station regeneration.
No, I'm on my phone now. I've used it as a hotspot, so I think we'll be all right. Thank you. Sorry.
We've just got Claire coming in now, I think. So we're using it as again to link those initiatives within the town. So we have the railway station, the health and wellbeing hub, which I think Jackie may want to come in as well about the purpose of that, so that we create again the health and wellbeing hub in the P21 location. We use the trails to get people to be physically more active and connect the town centre, so we increase the footfall in the town centre to revitalise the town. And then with that 0.6 mile, we encourage the walking and cycling to that part of the college. And again, if we're able to share those visuals, which we'll work on throughout the rest of the meeting, and get IT onto that for us. You will be able to see that this is not a college project per se. It is absolutely about the broader community using this space, both in terms of the pool and the provision around and the environment in which you then see the pool, and also in terms of the business growth, the growth business units in terms of individual units that will foster the entrepreneurial aspect, but also linking back to the entrepreneurial aspect within the college in terms of the students, so that there's the catering offer, and there's the space and the skills and the health and beauty aspect as well, which creates a real sort of marketplace within this community use of that part of the building. And if we then come back to something which our evidence base shows very, very strongly, it's Boston suffers from a real lack of attainment in the skills area. And I refer to the tip there. There are some aspects of, in terms of that attainment, where we see level NVQ4 and above attainment. Boston is 13% below the national average. That's a huge percentage when we look at the number of people that is actually X. And then if you look at, as we've talked about, the emerging robotic, automation and AI vectors on our existing industrial entities, which are principally agricultural and manufacturing, we know that the skills will be required for our communities to upskill readily. Yet we also know accessing education is fraught with a number of barriers. Anything that we can do in terms of, this is the purpose where we seek to remove the barriers. And the other aspect from the health side of this is the pool is when you look at the visuals, is in a much more appealing locality, shall I say. And I think Jackie may well wish to say something here. Being able to get people wanting to swim or get into a pool and start getting physically active is hugely beneficial to that wider health agenda. And I think another point that Claire has made very articulately is around that when you are in school, traditional school sees you having to do physical education. Your PE classes are still there up to year 11. But when you suddenly go into college, there isn't the same requirement for you to maintain that physical education. But if we can persuade and encourage those who attend the college to continue to access through the pool, and again, the visuals when you see them, actually we're enabling habits that can then go into adulthood to grow and foster. And I think, again, when we look at our health outcomes, how to maximise the take up and use of something like the pool is a really important part of seeking to address some of those health inequalities that we have. Just on our pause there, because I think Claire might be actually able to hear and join us now. And in the meantime, I'll just see if Louise has got any update on IT and the I'll hand over to Claire, and I'll speak to Louisa offline in terms of where we've managed to get to with IT. Thank you.
Morning, everybody, and I do apologise for this very poor internet connection. Can you hear me now?
We can, and we can see you as well, Claire.
Oh dear, I'm not sure that's a good thing, but anyway. I've just sent to Louisa the updated concept drawings, and as has been said, the work on this has been going really fast, and we've responded quickly, I think, to the need to incorporate the pool. And actually for the architects, what they have seen is this is a significant opportunity to revisit that space. And I actually expected them to lose their temper with me when I'm telling them it needs to be changed, but actually what they presented is something really exciting and very much that vision.
Claire didn't send me the link until 10:10. I can't get that.
I've just sent it. I've sent you a new one, Louisa.
Right, okay.
Yeah, this came last night quite late. Let's see if I can hand over. But no, everything.
Claire, we're trying to sort the IT to see whether we can get the images. But if you want to carry on, we'll carry on with the meeting.
Fantastic. So what I was saying is that everything Michelle was just saying is absolutely true. What we see with the post-16 demographic is that students and young people, whether that's school, sixth form or with us, lose the impetus to stay active, and actually having that pool right next to them is an absolute asset. And I think also what was said earlier is true, that this notion that people that everybody wants to swim in a lap pool is I think missing a trick. If we think about the exponential growth of places like centre parks where people are active with their families, they are swimming, they are using the pool, but in a way that much more fits with a lifestyle take on activity. So I'm really hoping that you can see some of the visuals that represent the incorporation of the pool. Obviously, it is probably even more aspirational than the original Mayflower concept, but I think it would make a significant asset to the town and links really beautifully to the PE21 aspirations. How are you getting on, Louisa?
I don't know whether, Louisa, we've got any images yet. If we haven't, we'll move on and take some further points.
We're just building attention, Neil, I think.
It'll be worthwhile when it does come. I think I'm not sure whether Councillor Skinner and Councillor Goodale have taken their hands down, but because their hands were raised, I'll give them both the opportunity, perhaps, and because this is how you appear on the screen, in this order. Councillor Paul Skinner first. Is this something that you still want to comment on?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, some of the bits have been mentioned by Michelle. The key point to all of this, I suppose, it's summed up in a social charter. The very fact that we've got a board together with people with experiences that are varied, from backgrounds that are varied. It's not a council project. It's not a health project. It's a Boston community project. And I think that needs to be really stated. Obviously, we have a few people that are worried around the sequences of losing facilities, i.e. the pool, etc. But that is just a project management thing. So none of us have got any intentions to go backwards with facilities. Broadly, in principle, I'm quite prepared to move the project lists as we've got. But the three projects that come at the end, I don't think we should discount them. Just because they're not within the town deal fund doesn't stop us from being really adventurous and finding a way to make things happen. Because that's the way I like to do things. I like to make things happen rather than find excuses for not doing. That's all I've got to say. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Yeah, no, I think that there's an awful lot of people on the board who are here to make things happen, and that's hopefully what we're doing. The discussions we've had about these projects were very much, we're not saying we're not doing them. We need to find ways and means to see if we can. The initial town deal funding application is, to my mind, just the start of the process, and hopefully it's a vehicle that can look to attract more funding, if and when it becomes available to towns or to the town for the benefit of the town. So I think that's something that's definitely been discussed. I'll pass on to Councillor Goodale.
Thank you, Chairman. Basically, I'm really waiting now to see the pictures. Really, that's why I removed my hand, because obviously the the incorporation of the pool into the Mayflower complex is a different. I know we did discuss it at the last meeting, but it is a different view of what was actually presented to us actually the last meeting. So I'll wait to see that. Obviously, from a lot of members of my committee, the pool. Well, I don't like to use the word deal breaker, but for them it probably would be. So I wait to see what the drawings are with the incorporation of the pool, and obviously there'll be a lot of excitement and questions, I dare say, over management of the pool and how that would fit in with what we were discussing originally on the council. But I'll just wait and see what the drawings are, please, Neil. Thank you.
No problem, Councillor Goodale. Yeah, I think there's a recognition. There's an awful lot of further work that would need to be done on the project to evolve it, and there's council assets, etc., that would need to be resolved as part and parcel of that process, which are going to be council decisions. But I think what we're trying to do here is put forward that as part of a coherent plan for the funding bid. There'll obviously other parts of that process, of the decision-making process, will need to be undertaken independent of the town deal, which is recognised. And I guess from the town deal's perspective, we just need to acknowledge that's a risk to the project delivery, isn't it? But if that's a risk that we're prepared to take in putting forward those proposals, then I think that's where we need to get to. Jackie, you had your hand up. Are you still wishing to make a comment?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to reassure Councillor Skinner and everyone else that for me, this is about the health and well-being of the people of Boston, and it doesn't matter where the pool is. The more we can encourage people to use it, it is about then how we make those linkages between all of the different elements, both the history, the heritage, the station, the college, and the health and well-being hub. They are all catalysts for improving. We know there are links between health and well-being, your ability to be employed, your skills and aspirations. We have some real issues around activity and therefore obesity and therefore cardiovascular issues in Boston. So we need to be looking at all of the ways that we can reduce and improve the health and well-being of the good burgers of Boston to be able to do that. And it's about innovative ways, and Claire and I have talked about that, and encouraging young people to think about their own health and well-being, and then encouraging their families to be able to do that, getting people to walk from the various elements. We can do our cardiac mile and we can plot it out as part of the heritage walk. It's all about, it isn't about separate buildings. This is about how we link it all together, and how we use these facilities is more than just about the building themselves.
Thank you, Jackie. I've got, and again, this is just in the order that they're coming up on my list. Greg Pickup has got his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that overall, I think it's a really, really strong list of projects. So credit to the team who have done all the work to put them together. I think with these 15, we really have got transformational projects for Boston, and I think it's a huge achievement. My question is about the 3 projects that are currently at the on hold status. I think that it's completely reasonable that that's the case for those 3 at the moment, because we've had various discussions about the fact that we don't yet have fully worked up proposals. But I'm thinking about Councillor Skinner's point about supporting them in other ways, and I'm just wondering if there is some way of still having these projects included in the town deal as kind of subject to detail or funding. That I imagine would really help them build the case for further match funding. Just thinking that in my experience, if you've already got one funder behind you, it opens up so many more opportunities. And I'm thinking, for example, the discussions we've had with Centenary, if they're able to go to other funders like the lottery, for example, and say, we've got a provisional indicative support from the town deal subject to confirmation of funding, that puts them in a far stronger position to make this project then happen. So I'm just wondering if either Michelle, Lydia can work some magic on the wording in the tip so that we can make a nod towards those projects happening without actually committing to the level and quite what they'd be at this point.
If I may just really quickly to pick up on that point so that we don't lose it in the you'll see that's why we put in brackets against each of them this term of inclusive growth, because what we want to describe in the tip narrative, which will change very slightly, not massively, is a process whereby we've got an inclusive growth programme. That the particular project that scores highest that we want to fund directly through the Towns Fund is the Holy Trinity project, but that's subject to people agreeing this list. But the other projects on the list are still reserved to the Towns Fund, and as opportunities evolve, particularly through that year of negotiation, we may want to play them in, but within the final financial envelope, we agree.
That's great. Thanks, Ivan.
David Fannin.
Thanks, Neil. The real value of this, I think there's a really nicely balanced list there. I think the real value of this is that list identifies where capital investment can accelerate the development of the town in terms of its economic offer. But fundamentally, what underpins all of this is it's about people in place. And anything that supports and strengthens that, whether it's through health and well-being, whether it's through skills and confidence and building that up right from the bottom through to the hard-edged development of skills for business. That's what this is about, and that's what I really like about the development at the college and how that develops, the detail around the pool and the development of that, the linkage to the town centre. I think all of this, these are I think the word catalyst was used. These catalyst projects collectively are what will make the difference for Boston. And I think it's the juxtaposition of those the assets, I think, is a real strength. It's not all just about the town centre, but it's not about spreading it so far that it becomes a diffuse overall offer. I like the way they sit together. I like the inclusive growth bit of it. I like that focus on skills and hard investment for the economy of Boston, but it's not forgetting about people in place.
Thank you, David. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, to be fair. We've got Matt Warman's joined us today, and I didn't welcome you formally, Matt, at the beginning, but I know you're a busy man. There's a lot going on in the country that you're helping to deal with, but thank you for joining us. And if you want to input now.
Thank you, and yes, good to be here. I'm sorry I can only stay for the first hour or so of the meeting, but I do think that on the one hand, this is a really strong list of projects. My conversations with MHCLG indicate that they are really enthusiastic for us to get this right and to get this over the line to the maximum possible extent. I think that's really good, and they say that partly because, as Councillor Skinner said, this is not a council project or even in some ways solely a town board project. It is a set of projects that have been developed across the community, across business, across the private sector as well. So I think it's a really strong list, and it's a coherent list. I think what we need to do collectively, and what will benefit all of us collectively, is to be talking about what this does for the town as a single package, obviously with lots of component parts, but making the case both to MHCLG in terms of the bid and to the wider public that this is something that, if it's done properly, will really benefit Boston, can be discussed in a way that really gets the public on board. And I hope that we're sort of very near to that point where we can have those sorts of conversations where we say this is community driven, community led. These are in large part projects that the community has often been talking about itself as well. What the board has done here is try and put them together into that coherent package that makes sense and will get the funding that it deserves. So very keen to support this. I've had lots of really helpful conversations, obviously with some of the people in this digital room already, and with lots of people from the official side and from the political side in government. There is real enthusiasm to support Boston. And I think we should be equally enthusiastic about taking that message out there and saying this is what we're trying to achieve for the town, because I do think there's an awful lot there, and this is the beginning in the Towns Fund of something that catalyses further investment in other areas as well. So really enthusiastic to sort of get it to that point where we can talk about it as one big project with lots of facets. And I think there are entirely legitimate concerns over the pool. There are entirely legitimate concerns over does it sort of do everything it says on the tin. I think we need to be in a position to sell that as coherently and as vigorously as possible, and crucially to allay some of the misconceptions or hairs that have been running in the wrong direction, so that we can get on with it as quickly as possible. But as I say, very keen to do everything I can to help that process. And sorry, I can only stay for the next 5 or 10 minutes, but thank you everyone for all of the work you've done thus far.
Thank you very much for that, Matt. And it's, you know, really good point in terms of where we need to take this beyond just, you know, the next few weeks, and maybe that message, that one project message, is something that we can take on board when we consider the next item on the agenda in terms of, you know, how we develop the board and where we go from here, you know, as a coherent list of projects or one project. So that's really useful feedback. Thank you. Has anybody else got any queries? I've not seen any other hands raised. Louisa, are we? And is there any update?
Jason from IT has joined the call and he's got the picture ready.
Jason, are you able to share with the board some of the images?
We'll give it a go. This is live, so bear with me a second. I'm going to try and share my screen now, so bear with me.
I have also got some still images as well, if they're ready to go, if that doesn't work. Okay.
Okay, Claire, I don't know whether, Claire, I don't know whether you want to give any, I wouldn't say commentary, but feel free to comment as some of these images come up if you feel that's appropriate.
I'm hoping you can all see my screen at this moment.
And Jason.
Thank you, Chair. So for people in the room, what you can see here is the visual of the, as we talked earlier, right back in the beginning of the concept, with an upturned boat that references the Pilgrim Fathers. I'm just going to try and find somewhere that's a bit less noisy. Yeah, so the building will take up the parcel of space that the current Jeff Moulder has. So you can see to the left is the run through to the drain, and sort of where, do you want to move on? A hotel without Wi-Fi.
Sorry, I lost your voice there. You asked me to move a bit.
Yes, you did.
Can you repeat what it was you wanted me to do?
I wanted you to move on to the next slide. Is that possible?
It's not a slide. This is an interactive view.
How to operate it, Jason, or not, in terms of getting within the building?
Into the building. I'll see if it lets me do that.
If you go forward, Jason, this is the sort of where the biomass boiler is currently, the green area, and that's something that would be retained to continue to demonstrate a clean growth approach to building. So if you can move forward, you'll go straight through the building.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. It's not exactly the most responsive thing. I've told
Just
it to move in multiple times. Oh,
there we go. You go in now.
As you can see, it's working very, very quickly.
Here we go. So to the right of this space that we're going in now will form the major area of the centre, which will have back of house, hospitality, hair and beauty, and all the conference, meeting facilities and employability rooms that this light and airy space will allow you into. So this is the kind of the welcome area that we're going to move into now.
Eventually.
Louisa, it might help as well if you can let me share screen as well. And I've got some stills that if this doesn't work, I can just refer to.
Yeah, will do, Claire.
Thank you.
Louisa, if you make Claire a co-host, she'll be able to take over sharing screen.
Ooh, now you're going.
Move in.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I've made you co-host, Claire.
Thank you, Louisa. So the entrance that you can see to the left is where you come into the building, and it would provide a central reception area, whether or not you're visiting the council facility of the pool, whether you're a business hoping to access the enterprise centre, or indeed our students. And it's this very much kind of community hub that we try to create with this concept, so that this is open to all. It's not it's a building that removes the challenges of coming into a college, which can often be the case. So as you can see, light filled, full of trees and fauna. Flora, sorry, not fauna, we have no beasts in there. And right towards the end where we're heading now, that actually switches where the pool is currently to actually head up alongside the Maud Foster drain. So if you're in the pool looking out through that big glass exit at the back, you'll be looking out across both directions of the waterway that runs along the side. If anybody has any questions, obviously happy to answer, because these are quite new concepts. So what you can see as we're sort of heading towards is the glass space that will be the divider between the main college entrance, if you like, and the pool area. So that connectivity between what might be seen as leisure facilities and also commercial and conference facilities will be synergetic. Are you getting there? Doing a great job, Jason.
Yeah, patient.
Takes a while. What's been really important with this concept, however, is that whilst we have a large open space that we can use, anyone can use for events and eventually, hopefully, large gatherings, it's really critical for us to maintain safeguarding. So to the right of this concept drawing, you'll see that at the bottom there, that will be almost like a electronic gated system. So it's just to the bottom there, which will allow only people with access rights to get into the main buildings. Obviously, with the college environment and vulnerable young people, it's really important that we're careful who goes through. So it will be a completely managed system using the latest electronic technologies. What I should say as well is the space that you can see, whilst it hasn't got furniture in, will be the place designated for the ad hoc digital learning area. And with super fast broadband to allow connectivity for those particularly who aren't able to access. I think it's important to say that not everybody, we think everyone has, well, clearly haven't got great access to Wi-Fi this morning, but for some people, some young people particularly, that's non-existent. So if I share my screen, I'll show you some of the stills. So what you can see here is the second floor plan.
Claire, sorry to interrupt you mid-flow, but do you require anything else from me?
No, I'm fine, thank you. I think we'll move to these now because you probably got the visuals from the outside.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you, Jason.
I'll leave you to it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So these are the back of house areas with the employment areas here and the hair and beauty here. So if you see, this is the big open space that I was describing, with opportunities for meeting areas that are close at hand, and also the really important human resource infrastructure that's needed to support an outreach centre such as, well, a community centre such as this. So this is a view from the air showing the Maud Foster drain, and to this end here, as you see, the glass area is where the pool, so it will move from this area here to over here, and all of this space that I'm highlighting with the cursor is open, will be open for the public outside of our normal college operating hours. So again, a really safe space for people to be within. If I move on. So that's concept as you're walking in from Rowley Road, of course, making sure that we've got plenty of access for cycle routes and cycle storage. This is the vision from the Rowley Road entrance. And this is the interior space with that centralised reception area leading onto the pool area at the back there. So all of that visibility and all of that light. I've been very clear that we need to use sustainable materials for the building. So you can see inside the use of wood and material is really, really key to the concept. And that's looking back towards the entrance. And finally, that's the area for the pool. So we intend to, well, hopefully have that a very planted area, and again, resonate almost with that Centre Parks feel. So very much leisure pool, but still a pool where people can learn to swim, which is really key for our community. So I'm happy to stop sharing if people have got any questions.
Thanks, Claire. That's fantastic. Really gives an insight into how the concept's evolving. Has anybody got any questions of Claire or any further comments on this project? David?
Just thank you, Neil. Just to, Claire, to try and get a sense of perspective, what are the dimensions of the pool that you're looking at?
The entire floor space is around about 5,800 square metres. So it will take up almost exactly what the Jeff Mulder Centre takes on now. But with in the more sort of service areas at the back, it will be two-storey.
Okay, and the length of the pool?
25 metres.
25 metres. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at all? Andy, Lawrence?
Using the Centre Parks model, where they've got a lazy river and so on and so forth, would it be possible to incorporate such things to make it a true destination where people really, really want to go to and spend weekends there? I think it's a fantastic idea, but can it be developed even further?
Well, I would say that the sky's the limit, so long as the budget hasn't got a limit. I think what we're starting to see here is something so different that with proper buy-in and feeding into that aspiration, it could be, you know, even better than it is now. So we've tried to be cautious, knowing that, you know, the amount of money that's available through Challenge Fund has to be significantly matched by other funding. But if your pockets are deep, Andy, I'll give you a slide.
Thank you, Claire. I just think it would make it an absolute true destination, and people would really, really want to use it. That's my view.
Thank you.
So, Stephanie Dickens.
Thank you. The vision, the pictures look amazing, Claire. Can I just ask, in terms of functionality, where we've got the leisure pool at the moment, which is for the little ones to learn to swim and that sort of thing, and the training pool, which is for more serious swimmers to, like the swimming club, to work on lap training and that sort of thing, do you think this pool will be able to do double duty as both, or do you think some of the functionality might be lost?
I think unless we go back to the original plan, which is two separate pools, to achieve both, I can't think I've ever seen that, to be honest. A leisure pool that also has a serious swimming pool. I think we've got to, for me, and it echoes what Jackie eloquently put forward, was what are we trying to achieve with a pool? If it's about getting people to be active, to enjoy being together as families, to swim, but not necessarily to do lengths and lengths of the pool. I think it would be interesting when we go forward with a business case to see how many people actually do use the pool for laps, and whether there's other facilities for them to use. And maybe there is a compromise to be had, and it's obviously not for me to say what's most important to the town, getting people involved in swimming as an activity, or to have that kind of more serious competitive swim. I think that's a question for us all to ask ourselves.
Okay, one follow-up, if I may, Chair, just before we move on. Has any discussion been had with the swimming club that currently use the Jeff Moulder at all at this stage?
I don't know if Claire or Michelle want to ask that. I mean, there's clearly, I mean, it's evolving at a very fast pace, and today's decision is not a final decision in terms of this is what will happen. It's a decision for the town deal to support this as a funding bid, and there's many things that then would need to be done thereafter as we develop the projects or all the projects and all the business cases. So I don't know if your hand's up there, Michelle, or to answer that, or Claire. If
I'm happy to come in there, Neil. I think the point again of today's is the art of the possible. Certainly, as we go and to facilitate a bid being made as part of the Towns deal, I certainly think as part of the 12-month business case development, that is where we will seek to really engage with all users of the pool area, but also those who don't currently use it, in terms of how to maximise how to get people in and increase that approach, coming back to Jackie's point about the inequalities of current health and physical activity. So the consultation will not be as advanced as we would have hoped at this stage. That's definitely something, coming back to Ivor and stakeholder engagement for continuing following the submission of the tip, is really important to pick up, and that's where we will clearly pick up that consultation in that in-depth approach.
Thank you, Michelle. Richard, Tori, I can see you've got your hand up, and I can see that Matthew wishes to raise a point, and I'll come to you next, Matthew.
Hi, I'm not quite sure what the usage is, but I understand that one of the swimming clubs who mostly uses the training pool, they pay something like £60,000 a year to Jeff Moulder for the use of the pool. So I think that they might be a little bit, I understand that you can't have a dual purpose pool, but finding some other sort of facility to keep such as those going, I think would be useful to bear in mind. That's all.
Thank you for that point, Richard. I think that comes back to the more detailed consultation processes that will need to be done as part of the detailed development of the business brief. Matthew.
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone. Just a quick point, really, and just picking up on Michelle's point earlier. It's the art of the possible is kind of what we're discussing this morning. And whilst I love the concept of a swimming pool, my only sort of fear with this is if we're trying to make it a leisure destination, the first sort of look of these means that, from my perspective as an outsider looking in, is it looks a very functional facility. And I guess I'm picking up on the earlier speaker's note about if we're trying to think of it as a leisure destination around centre parks, then it perhaps needs to look more like that type of facility. Whereas this looks like similar to the facility which is already available at PRSA. So that would be my first point. My second point is, you know, I'm not aware of kind of profit and loss relationship with swimming pools, but my feeling is that they are extremely expensive to run. the income generated from them often doesn't cover their costs, but I don't know that in detail. So just thinking about our original vision, which is about obesity and levels of activity in and around Boston, and you know, we try and do our best at school, but it is about those lifelong habits. It's now saying, what is the best way to make our people active, and is swimming the best way to make it active? And that's fine if it is. I don't have any research on that. If it's not, then kind of what's plan B in terms of having an amazing fitness facility where you can go and still get active and fulfill the vision, but potentially at a lower cost with greater attractiveness for people. So I don't know the relative engagement percentage of people of Boston with swimming versus that going to fitness centres and things like that. So I think whilst I do support the proposal that's been put ahead, I love the kind of images of, I see the internal hull of a ship, which kind of links very nicely with the kind of Mayflower concept. But it's just, is it really a financially viable project to deliver? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Matthew. I don't know whether Claire wants to comment on that at all, or not. I guess the concept is at an early stage, and there'll be a lot of consultation with regard, and the design will evolve, you know, and as will the business case development as we go through, and some of the comments that are being made today, I'm sure, will be fed into those processes. It's about trying to come up with a sort of coherent plan, you know, at the moment, which seeks to address a whole host of different needs. You know.
I was going to say, Neil, and I think that is the case. The business case workup will be the key thing. I think we've got to decide as a town deal, as has already been said, and as a town representatives, and Matthew's point is absolutely right. A pool is expensive to run. However, we've heard from many people in this virtual room and otherwise that the town is not willing to give up a pool. So that either has to be a private venture or something that we continue to, well, I don't, but we continue to manage as a central council function, with the understanding that, of course, pool is, yes, it's about fitness, but it's also crucially, I think, ensuring that our children can swim. You know, we live in a very sort of waterlogged area, and I think, you know, we have a duty as well to make sure that there is space for children to learn. So yeah, that's my take on it. But I think you're absolutely right. The numbers are going to be critical.
Okay, Councillor Goodale.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, yeah, listen, it is a very exciting drawing, I have to say. But speaking on behalf of BTAC committees as I do, rather than a personal point of view, and from a personal point of view, I find it very exciting that we're actually looking at the art of the possible, as it were, and it certainly would be a striking building and a striking facility. But I do know that members of my committee are actually looking for a very similar facilities what we already have, be that in a new pool and a different place, or I mean, this incorporating into the Mayflower Centre and leaving the pool in the same position or the same area is an exciting development, I think. And I don't want to pour cold water onto the whole scheme, but because I do find it quite exciting. But I am concerned that my members of my committee are looking for a replacement pool, if that's to be the case. I mean, a lot are not happy with the actual decisions that are being put forward as it is. But that's a different story. It's a different issue. That's a council matter, not for this board. But I do like the idea of it being included. But I was always working under the impression that the town forward to us to be moved into the town centre with the proper help facilities. But I accept what's happening, and I'd like to congratulate Claire really on actually incorporating that into the designs that that she's putting forward. So I'm happy to sort of look at for us to proceed on the basis of the art of the possible. But I do think there is a lot of discussion outside this board which will need to take place before the art of the possible becomes the possible. Because there are lots of issues, as Richard has raised one or two. I know we have other facilities around the town, but they're not as good and they're very expensive. And most people in the town can't afford to use them. So from that aspect, I think we need to look at a municipal provided facility of a pool. It is very expensive to run, but I think it's important for the area and for the town. As has already been said, we are surrounded by water, and I think it's very important that all of our children have the ability to learn to swim. In fact, I think it should be part of all schools' curriculums that they actually do learn to swim. And I say that as somebody that can't swim, because my school didn't actually take you to learn to swim, and my parents didn't go swimming either. So I never actually learned. I made sure my children learned and my grandchildren learned, but it's something that, so I do, it is an important thing for me that we have this facility. And I think it's, we have to have the discussion of whether it's a family facility where people can go learn to swim and enjoy the water and the pool together, as we do have days, as Jeff Moulder was designed to be. And obviously the training pool was there for a different issue. But I'm happy to support it as the concept of the art of the possible, Chairman. But I have serious reservations of the way forward on this. I will support it as far as this board goes as the art of the possible. But I'll have to take the concept back to my committee and seek their guidance, because technically I'm here on their behalf rather than my own. I know Councillor Skinner is there for the whole council, but I'm actually here as a representative of the town members, and I really have to take these concepts before I could actually totally agree to this, to actually seek their approval. I'm sorry for that, but personally I think it's brilliant, and I like the way, I like the concept, and I like the vision of the art of the possible. So I'll say no more than that, but I will have to take this back to my committee to actually to come up with a full support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodo. Yeah, and to be abundantly clear that what we're doing today is approving a bid for town deal funding. We recognise that there's other processes that will need to fall into play, or that will need to be gone through, that will affect the potential delivery of some of those projects. We need as a board to be conscious that those provide or present risks in terms of those delivery, and we just need to make the decision as to whether we as a board wish to put these forward as the projects within our funding bid, and the other processes will quite in the proper way be undertaken outside of the town deal remit. And there is as we'll come on to a set process of business plan development and negotiations in terms of the funding that will enable those processes to happen ahead of the project delivery of some of these. So I think as long as we're clear what we're proposing, we're not today proposing that this is the final scheme and everybody has approved it. We're just, as a town deal board, approving the funding.
Chair, it's Mick Lazarus here from MHCLG. Apologies, I can't raise my hand, so sorry for interrupting. So,
but yeah, if you'd like to join the meeting or comment.
Thank you. So just my view. So some really strong, striking images there. So thank you, Claire. So I've made this point before. So you should absolutely use such images in your tip to bring it to life. I think not just at a project level, but at an overall tip level. I think they are really striking. It'll start bringing it alive. So don't neglect that, and do use that opportunity, not just on this project, but on other ones as well. And just on the, a few people have mentioned the sort of commercial viability risks. I think that's natural at this stage, given the undeveloped nature of projects. That we are seeing that across the board. And I think the reality is, I would hope that come heads of terms when you make an offer, and as business case development kicks in, if there are significant risks and that flow from that, and this project isn't viable, then I think there will be an opportunity to sort of look to us to sort of swap that with another project. I think those 3 reserve projects that you talked about earlier, there'll be an opportunity to do that. So I think it's perfectly natural there'll be gaps and uncertainty at this time. Things will develop, and it may well be an absolutely viable project, and those risks may be mitigated. But if not, I think there will be an opportunity to bring something else in and drop it if need be. So I think, you know, there is that flexibility there. I think so. It's just having that conversation with us.
Thank you, mate. That's really useful at this point in time. Councillor Skinner, I think you raised your hand. Did you want to comment again or not?
Yeah. So I mean, there's lots of users of the training pool, not just the swimming club. You know, it supports scouting, sea cadets, local canoe club, which I confess I'm a member of. So the devil, yes, is in the detail, but all of this is about how can we best support our community, and it's a question. A long time ago, somebody said, "Don't bring me problems unless you've got solutions." So we just need to be looking for all those solutions. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. I think we've had a good discussion around the table and the prioritisation of projects. I think what I'd like to do is maybe take these 2 recommendations within the paper that's been presented. The first relates to the table of projects, and the proposal, I think, is to approve the current list of projects with the revised figures in red in terms of the amount of funding. It's just below the £25 million. I think I'm right in saying that Councillor Skinner earlier in the discussion proposed or recommended approval of that recommendation. If we got a seconder for the vote.
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Greg. It would be useful, I guess, if as this is sort of quite a crucial part of the process, if we could maybe see people, if that's possible, because I think we just need a show of hands from the board members to show whether they're approving that recommendation. Hang on, Jackie, I haven't asked yet. Very keen is Jackie to support that. So thank you for that. But yeah, if we could maybe just, hopefully nobody's in any compromising positions, but if we could maybe have a look of everybody who's on the board or wishing to vote, that would be really good. And so that we can, we've got a firm recommendation in terms of the list of projects with a total value of £24,968,119 as per the amendments to that initial board paper in red. It's been moved and seconded. Can we have a show of hands, all those in favour, please? And anybody against? Or any abstentions? I think that's fairly unanimous. Certainly was approved. So thank you very much for that. Obviously, there's a lot of work still to be done to develop that list of projects, the business case development, as we've talked about, and we'll come on to that. But I think that's a good basis on which we can put forward the proposals. The remainder of the second recommendation was in relation to the actual final wording of the tip, and I think Ivan has already alluded to the fact that there's a bit of work left to do with regard to that, arising from feedback we've had from the check and challenge process and feedback from local government office. In the paper, Ivan has outlined the elements that we need to particularly look at. I don't know whether anybody's got any specific comments that they want to make on that. Clearly the aim has got to be that we finalise that by the end of October so we can submit. But are we happy with the recommendation, or in terms of that being delegated to the chair and vice chair for agreement of any final refinements to the tip? Does anybody want to comment on that element? Because I'm conscious that we specifically split the discussion with regard to the list of projects first, and haven't had a detailed discussion maybe as to some of the detailed wording of the tip.
I'm quite happy, Chairman, to propose that is taken as described. I think this is a very dynamic situation. I'm sure the chair and vice chair are well competent in getting the right wording. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody prepared to second that motion? David Fannin, and Jackie. The other thing that I would say before we finalise that is that there is a lot of work going on in terms of the presentation. I think it's a point that Mick made with regard to sort of bringing the tip to life, and there's a lot of work going on at the moment to actually make sure the document is presented well. The sort of images we've seen, from the Mayflower Centre are the sort of thing that we can put in, but I know there's a lot of work on the presentation side that will be included. So this is what we've got today is the text, but the aim is to bring it to life with photos and images that really bring out the unique nature of Boston. So that will be done as part of that process. So
just to say that the offer is on the table from I know a number of us to help Lydia and the team to get that wording right. So please don't hesitate to ask some of us to edit sections and come back, because it's in all of our interest to help, and I certainly would be happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. And I know you've made some specific comments on that. Yes, Michelle.
Sorry, Neil. Thank you. Yes, Jackie has, just on that point, Jackie, you have made some specific comments. So we've got that wording, and what we'll do as well, because it's coming before the meeting today, I think we can circulate that, and then Louisa will incorporate that into the minutes. But I think what we'll also do, Paul Skinner's point around the chair and vice chair having that final sign off before we submit on the 30th, is a town deal document. What we will keep doing is, as we get iterations, we will circulate to the board, so that, again, if you have got any more comments, and I think Neil has said, and Ivan had said earlier on as well, we welcome your input. And just echoing Ivan, obviously we can't take a new project at this stage, but those observations of, if you don't think it's in, for want of a better word, the sweet spot in terms of what it's trying to articulate, or you think there's a few statistics that you think hone in on the evidence base that would be helpful to have come out. And again, I come back to the piece of work I described earlier on regarding linking more directly to the Food Valley, the high performing opportunities announcement, and also how that fits into the skills and logistics industry. And again, we have a consultant working for us on this project, supporting Valley, and Martin Collison has produced some sort of facts around those sectors that, again, we're going to incorporate into the tip. And it doesn't have to be because part of it is about the visuals, as Neil has said. So sometimes as well, being able to have a quick infographic that is very informative and very easy on the eye, but actually just creates creates another little bit of layer of evidence. So anything that you have that you're taking away from today, please, we can still take that, and we still want that that input from you as a board. So thank you, Neil.
Can you hear me? Yeah, you can still hear me, sorry. Technology nearly failed me. Yeah, so on that basis, we've got the second recommendation is that we're going to finalise the tip by the end of the month, and any outstanding refinements will be delegated to the chair and vice chair. So could, again, we have a show of hands in favour of that recommendation? Anybody against? Okay, we'll take that as being approved. Thank you very much, and we will, as Michelle said, continue to keep the board informed as we go through that process towards the end of the month. Thank you very much for that. I think we need to move on to the final item, the board development and next stages. There's a brief report from Ivan. I don't know whether you want to say anything further with regard to this, Ivan.
It's pretty low octane stuff compared to the really interesting discussion we've had, and people may be a bit weary after 90 minutes of talking about that. It's revealing my loyalties. It's a bit like watching a Nottingham Forest football match at the moment. Sometimes you can kind of feel a bit grueled out by the end. But what this does is it sets out clearly what we might do next. And I just wanted to put this forward because I'm hoping that nobody is wanting to disappear too far into the sunset once the bid's submitted, but obviously it's within your gift to do that. But just to make it clear that there is additional work to be done, and that the role of the Towns Fund Board will continue in a range of different ways going forward. I've just set them out here, so there's a kind of a feedback period, because we'll be waiting to hear back what people think of the plan, and if things run to schedule, we're likely to know that in early 2021. There's then a negotiation period, and that's when some of the points that people like Greg have raised are quite important. You know, it may be that some of the projects that we're putting technically on hold today could come back into play. There's then the development period, which is around beginning to make sure that everything's aligned, and the kind of discussions around the nature of the swimming pool and other things come into that, for example, in relation to the Mayflower. And then there's a delivery period. So it's just to make it clear, I'm not springing on people now that they're trapped in this for 5 years, so please don't get me wrong. But what I am saying is that, you know, with that big heave over the line to get the bid in, it doesn't all end. And I think there are some quite important tasks for people to be aware of going forward. And you know, one would hope that this quite a dynamic and inclusive group would be at the heart of that.
Thanks for that, Ivan. And I think that there's been a recognition that this is an ongoing thing. This is the start of the process rather than the end. I think it's useful to sort of outline that. It may be that what we need to do in some of one of the next board meetings is pan that out in a bit more detail and see where we go in terms of the structure of the board and how we evolve it. I suppose in that sense, whether there's any particular guidance from the government as to how they see boards developing as they move into that stage would be useful for us to just research and sort of feedback to the board, and maybe any lessons from some of the initial town boards, you know, like Grimsby and some of the first waves, whether or not we can learn any lessons from them. I don't think you're necessarily suggesting we sit and have a debate as to what the board will need to do over the next 5 years right now, but I think what we need to do is probably in preparation for those sorts of discussions, maybe put forward some suggestions, if you like, as to how we think that structure will look and going forward, based on, you know, as I say, maybe government advice, lessons from previous. And I think taking on board Matt Warman's point about the promotion of the overall vision, the overall one, you know, town deal project, I think that's a key role that we will have in ensuring we sell this to the local community, and we make sure people are aware of, you know, the significance, hopefully, of the public sector investment that we're bringing in. Has anybody got any comments on that? Michelle?
Thank you, Neil. I just wanted to expand slightly. I think we've talked on so many occasions about how the town deal platform itself, with you as a board, and the discussions and interests that the board and the platform of the town deal has generated. And we really believe that the town deal board has got a future in continuing to develop and attract that interest. And actually, I was talking with Ruth Carver, who's the Chief Executive of the LEP yesterday, and we were talking about how actually the next stage of the town boards across Lincolnshire is to develop that relationship into the LEP as well. So the town boards become a really important part of the Greater Local Enterprise Partnership to ensure that the ideas and promotion projections that will continue to come to the town board, I think, because of the interest you have generated, are captured, and then that we can utilise other funding streams as they come on board. And again, one of my least favourite expressions is oven ready, but oven ready projects. And to be fair, that's something that we have not been able to do particularly well in the past in Boston, in that we've not sometimes been able to maximise opportunities of external funding because we haven't got some of those ideas worked up into a concept at first stage, or even a project that can be delivered. And I think there's been so much hard work generated through the board and through the partners that have become interested in the board, that we have that opportunity to continue with that creation of ideas and concepts that build on what's been proposed so far in the TIP, and also to continue to attract external investment into the borough. And again, Lydia and I see this, now already in terms of the conversations that we're having with the interest in the borough in terms of that inward investment. So it's a really important point that we might submit on the 30th, or we will be submitting on the 30th, and everyone goes, phew, that's it then. No, we'll still be wanting to meet with you as a board, because we'll still be wanting to provide the update from the stakeholder engagement that will continue as part of the report that Ivan referred to at the beginning of one of the pieces of work that we've yet to complete for the TIP, but also in terms of how projects are coming on stream, because as we agree the budget envelope with MHCLG, and we agree the final list of projects on the TIP, they will come on stream within that next 12 months as they get to their final business conclusion. And therefore it's important the board can see that as well and are involved in that in order to keep that momentum. So it is very, very much still an active board. Yeah, and as Ivan says, not to scare everyone and say you're going to be stuck here for the next 5 years, but I think it's also an opportunity to at certain key points to review board membership and review the skills we might need for the next stage, and review and that's a natural evolution of an active board as well. So thank you, Neil.
Yeah, thank you, and maybe we, as I say, we need to bring something back to a future board meeting, and I guess on that we just need to think about, well, when will the next meeting be? I think we certainly don't need anything very quickly, do we? There's been a lot of hard work and a lot of time spent by everybody, but we will need to put something in the diaries, and maybe we'll get our heads together to agree what's a suitable time frame for having another meeting, and we can feedback where the development of the board thereafter. Andy?
Yeah, that's just prompted a question from me, because I'm not from a funding world, as it were, but we'll cost all these projects out, but things like this do have a habit of going over budget at some point, and yeah, sitting on the board and seeing these right through to completion. How are things like that dealt with? Because we're pretty close to £25 million now, and if all of a sudden it comes to 26, 27 million pounds later on down the line as we're trying to lay the last brick and put the last roof tile on, how does that actually work?
Yes, unless anybody else wants to look at that, that's about program management and project management. Within the individual projects, the idea is that we develop the business cases for these projects. We try to ensure that before they start, that we look at the risks and we try to ensure that the projects don't go over budget. But if they do, then it's a case of those projects need to be individually managed by the project sponsors, and then work through with the delivery vehicle, which is the town deal, and that's, I think, partly what we're alluding to really here, that when we move into those stages, we need to be aware that some of those processes will need to be to play out and be worked through in the way that all these funding projects do. This, as was discussed earlier by Mick Lazarus, is an element of flexibility within the programme, and that can come into the equation, but it's about project management and programme management, and those are some of the things that I think the Town Deal Board then will need to look at how we set ourselves up to do that. Ivan, I don't know if you want to come in or agree or disagree.
I just like to agree and emphasise that ultimately the hazard will live with the project sponsor, not the Town's Deal Board. So just to reassure people, but I think there is a role for the Town's Deal Board to oversee that programme management element, and you know, ultimately there will be a finite amount from government, and they won't be prepared to put any more on the table. So that's why it's so important now that we've been through this quite robust process and we get a year to sort some of that out. It still doesn't mean, as you'll know, Andy, that we're guaranteed that there won't be some issues, but then that comes down to ultimately the responsibility of the sponsors of each individual project.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that answer.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we'll note the content of that report and the fact that we need to come back to that at future board meetings. Greg, have you got your hand up? Would you like to raise a point?
Yes, just a quick one about future board membership. It strikes me that as a board, we're making decisions that will have an impact for decades to come. I wonder if in the future board iteration, we might have a youth ambassador or some sort of representative of the college or the youth ambassador scheme, so that we can have some active involvement there.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of people nodding, and I think to some extent that's partly why we're raising this at this stage, in terms of we need to look, you know, we've got this far, but you know, if we're going to really transform the town, we need to bring everybody with us and have the proper representation and make sure that that continues, you know, for the life of the programme. So I think there's unanimous agreement that we need to look at that as part of that process. Any further comments? David Fannin?
Yeah, absolutely. On the youth ambassadors, we've put forward a couple of names. In the intervening period, one of them has decided with her partner to relocate back to Lithuania, unfortunately. But we're in the process of developing the youth ambassador program, and with the investment through the Town Deal, I'm really excited about that, and it's absolutely something that we will do, is through the youth ambassadors. And Matthew, I see you nodding there. We're working very closely with Haven High. That connection will be really important for taking forward the ambassadors. So yes, we'll keep the nominations coming.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. Conscious of time and taking too much of people's time. Move on to any other business. I don't think we've had anything raised before the meeting. Has anybody got anything else that they would like to raise before I close the meeting? And I'll pause slightly in case people raise their hands or wave frantically at me, which nobody is doing. In which case, I thank you very much for your time. We'll keep you posted with regard to, obviously, the submission of the tip. There'll be a lot of hard work, no doubt, being done over the next couple of weeks. But thank you very much, everybody, for your input this morning. It's been invaluable. I think we've got a tip that we can be proud of and can really make a difference to the town. And I thank everybody for their input into that. And we'll be in touch with regard to next meetings. Thank you.